show brought to you by WP Relax. No matter whether you have an existing site, want to transfer your site, or need to start a WordPress site from scratch, we have a plan to suit your needs. So say bye-bye to WordPress problems and relax with WP Relax.
Hi everyone, this is Ahmed Karimli and welcome to Be Efficient TV. The mission of this web TV show is to boost the efficiency of your business and life through tips and tricks from leading experts. And today I have with me Mike Michalowicz. He is a rapid business growth expert and profit expert. He's an author of 3 best-selling books and he's a speaker as well. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Thanks for having me, Ahmed. I appreciate this.
It's a pleasure to have you. So what's your background and how did you become an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so I started my first business right out of college. I didn't really actually intend to start a business, but kind of fell into it and was in computer technology. So I set up computer networks. When I started, it was just me and another guy, a friend of mine. We started it in the basement. We slowly built it, and it took us quite a few years, but maybe on our 5th or 6th year, we finally made the $1 million mark of sales and thought we had it going well and grew it. And then finally, I sold that company to private equity. That means some wealthy people bought it. My second company was in computer crime investigation, and we helped facilitate some of the biggest investigations, at least up to that point in history, in U.S. history. So we facilitated the investigation of Enron. Not all of it, just a piece of it, but we were a major player in there. Some big murder trials, divorce cases. We were doing that, and I sold that company to a Fortune 500, and then ultimately became an author, something that is actually my absolute true passion, doing what we're doing right now, just talking about entrepreneurship and sharing experience.
Investigations like what do you mean computer investigations?
Computer
like hackers?
Crime. Yeah, hackers and stuff. Mostly it was what's called corporate espionage or some kind of corporate litigation where people inside a business were stealing information or using information wrongly. And what we do, for example, in Enron, there was this transaction that happened. There was a barge in Nigeria, of all places, that there was a fake transaction that occurred. And what we did is we investigated the email string as it went around people, seeing what the real conversation was. Because when these people were confronted about this fraud that they had committed, they denied it. And they said, no, we didn't do this. But we looked at the email chain and we saw, sure enough, that they acknowledged and supported this fraudulent transaction.
Why did you sell the companies? Like, you are not a fan of cash flow if a company going well and it's just like passive income? Why?
But I totally am a fan of that now. But back then, I had this kind of rogue, tough guy mentality, thinking that I would just pump and dump my businesses, grow them very quickly and sell them, and I would just do it over and over again. My next iteration of this was I became an investor. I started 10 companies, or I just put my money into these companies.
As an angel.
As an angel. I call myself the angel of death now because I was really bad at it and I killed most of these businesses. My idea was put money in it and very quickly build and sell them, and that failed horribly. And that's when I got back to some of the grassroots, and one of the big things is exactly what you just shared. Focusing on cash flow. Build a business that I never want to sell. I enjoy the experience, and it generates wealth, for me and my colleagues.
Did you worked as an employee before the entrepreneurship life?
Yeah, for a very short period, for a couple of years. After I sold my second company, I was in a contract. It was a Fortune 500 company, and I was required to work there under contract. But that's the only times I've ever been an employee.
What is your current focus? Which companies you are involved in now?
Well, what I focus on is kind of what we're doing now, is spreading the word on my books, my philosophies. And this is what I do 90% of the time: speaking engagements, television, podcasts, and webinars. And I actually do well with that because in many circumstances I'm compensated for it. But behind that is also some businesses I've started. So I have a coaching organization. So some businesses owners reach out and want to be coached on my methodologies. I have a partner, her name's Donna, who runs that. I have a certification group I started for accountants and bookkeepers to be certified in Profit First. The method is one of my books, and I have a managing partner who runs that. I have a manufacturing business I'm a co-owner in, and there's a gentleman who runs that full time. But all I do is this. I continue to do what I enjoy to do the most and put my attention there, and then surround myself with people who are really capable in areas that complement what I'm doing.
Do you still invest in some companies? I saw that you're involved in a leather company and some other companies
that's
and
the
ventures.
manufacturer. Yeah, I do. I have. I'm an owner in about 6 businesses, but I'm not looking to expand anymore. Unless it's a perfect fit, unless the business allows me to just keep doing what I'm doing and I can get a little participation by doing what I'm currently doing, then I'm interested. The second it requires me to do more or different, it's outside of my wheelhouse. I don't want to do
Is that because you don't want to get involved in the headache in case you see something wrong and you cannot stop yourself from jumping in to fix the problem?
That's part of it. Yeah, I just want to do what makes me happy. And I love what I'm doing right now, so why ever change that? So the question simply is then if I can keep doing what I love to do and increase my income, I'll take it. But in most circumstances, it requires me to do different things. And now maybe I'm making a little more money, but I'm not liking what I'm doing. It's not worth it.
What's entrepreneurs and how to become one?
Well, so the term intrapreneur is the idea of entrepreneurship within an organization. So an entrepreneur is the man or woman who starts the business and manages and oversees it and is the risk taker. But as an organization grows in size, the people that join the organization are not inherently entrepreneurial. They're not inherently risk takers like you, the entrepreneur. If they were, they would start their own business in the first place. But you can inspire intrapreneurship where people within their capacities inside the business are empowered to take risks. They're encouraged to make mistakes because mistakes are the only way to find out new solutions. And so entrepreneurship is simply a cultural mindset where your people, your colleagues that you're working with are empowered to take on risk and are not punished because they messed up. They're encouraged to explore and find new ways. They're encouraged to be innovative.
You don't find kind of a conflict sometimes or struggles when you try to communicate that to the top managements of certain organizations because they want to contain their employees and control them. Yeah, they don't want them to think out of the box or start their own businesses or.
Of course. So I was talking with a large corporation and they said we need people that are more entrepreneurial. How do we make our people more entrepreneurial? And my first tip to them was, and they didn't like hearing this, you can't make someone into something. We are who we are. You want to find people who inherently have the desires that match what you need. So I said, if you really want the most entrepreneurial business you've ever had, you have to hire entrepreneurs, which means these are people that are going to join your business, but are going to be leaving very soon to start their own. But that's what you should expect because they're entrepreneurs. They said, well, we don't want that. We want people that are very loyal, will work ridiculously long hours, and be entrepreneurs. I said, well, I don't know if they exist. So the next step is to set up an environment to put certain safety mechanisms in place for these people, but also to allow them to explore on their own. And the most stringent people say, well, I don't want them exploring. I just want them to be entrepreneurial. And then it just doesn't work. If you're going to put this many rules in place and channel a person, but at the same time expect a whirlwind of entrepreneurial activity and a mindset like that, it's a mismatch. It's never going to happen.
The problem is, I think, also most of the CEOs of the big companies, they are employees. Like, they cannot get it. Like, maybe if you work with a startup founder, he has this spirit of entrepreneurship.
No, you're totally right. I've talked to some CEOs, and they said, "Yeah, I need my people to be more entrepreneurial." And they said, and as they sip on their, cognac or whatever, and a $1,000 or $1 million check gets deposited into their account every week. And what's happened is now these people have become so into the routine, they don't know what entrepreneurship is. And entrepreneurship, to me, is actually the lack of money forces you to be very innovative, to find new ways to accomplish the same things without money. So once these senior leaders are in a routine of where they have expectations of certain compensation and so forth, that starts chipping away at that innovative spirit.
What are the main problems that you find in the small businesses, like small business owners makes in their businesses when you try to fix and help them, fix the business and help them to grow?
The biggest problem I see is the mistake of focusing on growth and not profit. Believing that the more we grow, that profit will happen one day. That profit's a future event, and the only way to get there is with one more big customer or that big sale or the big investor, one big step. And so that's the whole reason I wrote my book, Profit First, was I believe entrepreneurial success, small business success, is actually allocating profit immediately, making profit a daily habit, that every step forward the business takes, that there's more and more profit accumulating. It's just a shame, and it frustrates me, but this is what I'm trying to fix in the world, is most entrepreneurs think you got to grow, and profit will happen one day, and that's a lie.
So how to profit first? Like, can you take us step by step through your system that you invented to help like businesses turn from cash-eating monster into cash money-making machine?
Yeah. So it's based upon a behavioral principle. So maybe this is where I should start. There's a behavioral principle out there called Parkinsons Law. And what Parkinsons Law states is that it's human nature to expand our demand to meet the supply of something. An example I love to use, and I use it over and over, is a tube of toothpaste. When we get a new tube of toothpaste, we put long beads on our toothbrush, and we're brushing our teeth away, and if the toothpaste falls in the sink, we put more toothpaste on it. But when that toothpaste tube is almost empty, now we start squeezing as much out of it we can. We bend it over the sink. We're biting on the end of the tube just to get more toothpaste out. And now we're very conservative. We don't put long beads on, we put small amounts on and brush our teeth. Our behavior changes based upon how much is supplied. Full tube of toothpaste, we inherently subconsciously use more, and when there's less toothpaste, we're much more conservative and innovative in how we extract toothpaste out of it. Well, that principle applies to toothpaste, but applies to every aspect of our lives, including money. And what happens with most entrepreneurs in the traditional mindset of grow, is when sales come in, the money gets deposited into a bank account, and we look at it, we see a full tube of toothpaste, and we consciously or subconsciously start spending money from that account, usually in its entirety. And we say, well, the money's here, I can make the investment I finally need to make. Now we can hire that employee we need to hire. I can finally pay myself. The money gets consumed very quickly. So the core principle of Profit First is simply do this. When sales come in, to immediately take out a predetermined percentage, 5, 10, 15% of that money from your income, your sales, and stick it into a profit account. Remove that money and hide it away from yourself. Now what happens is when that money comes in, there's less money available to spend, and behaviorally we start to adjust. We don't have a full tube of toothpaste anymore. We intentionally are giving ourselves a deflated tube, and now we start spending much more conservatively, and we become much more innovative. We find ways to get things done because we don't have the money in new, innovative ways.
So even in businesses, like, you encourage them to have like 2 accounts. Like usually in most businesses, they have one account and all the transactions. So do you advise them to have 2 accounts, and profit or saving account and current account? Or
Exactly. And I actually suggest 5 accounts. My grandmother did this. Is when my grandmother worked, and when she would get some money in, we'll say $100 for a couple weeks of work, she had these different envelopes. One was set up for food. Another one was to pay the rent. Another one was for giving back to the community, some form of charity. Another one was for expenses. And so when the $100 came in, she would divide the money up to the different envelopes. And what was fascinating is when she went food shopping, she always had enough money. Now, it wasn't the same amount of money. Sometimes she was sick and she would get no pay that week. Other times she'd work overtime and get a little more money. But she always had enough because whatever was in the food envelope, that was all she permitted herself to spend. So sometimes when there was little money in there, it was rice, and that's all we ate. Other times when there was more money in there, it was rice and chicken. So whatever was in the envelope, she mandated that's all she'll use. She never took from the other envelopes. And therefore, there was always money available for the different purposes. Our businesses, all we do is take grandma's envelope system and apply it to our businesses. I suggest 5 accounts. One's an income account. Its sole purpose is to collect money. As you sell services or your product, money goes into your income account and simply sits there. It's the incoming funnel, if you will. But then below, you have 4 more envelopes. You have a profit envelope, a profit account, a owner's pay account, a tax account, and operating expenses. The profit account is to take profit. It's a predetermined percentage, we'll say 10%. The owner's pay account is to pay you, the owner. The most important person in the business is the owner. They're the hardest working person. They work through the holidays and vacations. They do whatever it takes to get done. We need to pay you adequately, fairly as an owner. Otherwise, if you don't pay yourself well, and many owners don't.
So this is the owner account is a personal account. It has nothing to do with the business.
It's for your personal pay. It's for your personal pay. And the reason, Ahmed, is most business owners don't allocate money to themselves, and they start to resent their business. They say, gosh, I'm working so hard and the business isn't giving me financial freedom. So we allocate money toward profit. We also allocate money toward your pay. This is so that on a weekly or every 2 weeks, you can get paid out of that pay account. The profit account also goes to you, by the way, but that comes out in quarterly disbursements. Every 90 days, you take what's in the profit account, take it for yourself. So one is traditional pay, something you can expect, and the profit is that nice bonus every quarter. The tax account is for your tax responsibilities, and it depends on the country you're in, but every country has some form of tax. Some are ridiculously high, some are very low, but everyone's being taxed. Our business should be pre-allocating that money on our behalf. We started a business for financial freedom in the first place, so that money should be allocated by the company on our behalf, and then when the taxes are due, the company writes a check for our taxes. The final account is the operating expenses. And what you'll find, just to summarize this, is if you have, say, $1,000 comes into your account, just to pick a number, your income account, 10% we'll say goes to profit, that's $100 there. Say 30% goes to owner's pay, that's $300 there. Say another 10% goes to taxes, that's $100 there. That means there's only $500 left, or 50%, left for the operating expenses. And for business owners, this is kind of the wake-up call. You don't have $1,000 to run your business. You only have $500 to run your business. Find a way to get it done on $500.
Usually you encourage the businesses to automate these transfers between the accounts?
If they can. But, a lot of banks, unfortunately, don't do it. So it's a manual process for the banks I've worked with, where when money comes in, they won't automatically transfer a percentage. They'll usually transfer automatically a fixed dollar amount, but that's not the way to do it. You should do this off of percentages. So it may be a manual process.
And how about in let's say in the cash flow statement, you should show all these different accounts?
Yeah. So usually they would show in your cash flow, they'd show in your balance sheet. And that, by the way, is commonly the resistance I get. People say, this sounds so complicated. I got 5 accounts. It's not complicated. Setting it up may take you 10, 15 minutes because you have to call a bank and set these accounts. But when you see these different accounts broken out, the clarity is so obvious. Right now, if you have one account, or maybe 2, you see $1,000, our mind starts saying, well, some of this has to go here, some of it has to go there, and it's very confusing. Once the money's allocated to these different accounts, it's very clear what's available for what purpose. So it maybe requires a little extra effort, but the returns are huge.
But it does not encourage them also to spend in the same way when they see them, because the point of the profit first system is they don't see this thing, like, the profit account until they really need it. And
yeah, that's actually one of the steps I didn't touch on yet. It's called removing temptation. I love candy, for example. So the only way for me not to eat candy is not to have it in the first place. If there's no candy, I can't eat it. Well, the same is with our profit account. If we allocate profit to an account, but it stays our bank, it's very easy just when we need to borrow from ourselves to take money out of profit and put it back into our expenses, and that defeats this entire system. So what I suggest in Profit First is find a second bank. This bank is simply to remove the temptation of borrowing from yourself. So when you allocate profit to your profit account, invoke a transfer of that money into your other bank so it's out of sight and therefore out of mind. You want to make it difficult to access that profit money, and therefore it just piles up, and you are forced to run your business off of what you have in your operating expenses.
You wrote a book called The Pumpkin Plan before Profit First. So Pumpkin Plan versus Profit First system. What's the difference?
Yeah, so I actually have them right here. So the Pumpkin Plan, so this was Profit First, this book, right? And then Pumpkin Plan is this one. Pumpkin Plan, you'll see, and why I wanted to show it to you, is that giant pumpkin. And this is a picture of a city, any city, but there's a giant pumpkin. And the concept of the Pumpkin Plan is that when it comes to pumpkin farming, which is very popular where I am, especially in the fall season, people like to collect pumpkins. There is a small faction of pumpkin farmers that grow colossal pumpkins. An ordinary pumpkin will grow maybe 10, 15 pounds, but a colossal pumpkin can grow up to 1 ton, like 2,000 pounds. And what was fascinating about these pumpkin farmers was they just changed a few processes and the pumpkin responded with explosive growth. But once I learned this, I was wondering if it would apply to business. And I found there's many parallels in life. What's true in one area often becomes true in another. So I took these principles that I learned in pumpkin farming and translated it into business. And sure enough, I started applying my own businesses. That's when that one company in particular, the forensics company, it grew explosively. And then once I started experiencing success with it, I was like, I got to write a book about this, and wrote the book.
So what is the process that you use to make this, rapid growth?
Yeah, there's quite a few steps. It's about 5 or 6 steps, but I'll give you the key ones. The first in colossal pumpkin farming is they are very selective of the seed they pick. Ordinary farmers pick any seed that's cheap because they're in the quantity game. They want to spread as many seeds as possible over their fields. But a colossal farmer will investigate a seed under a microscope and look at ones that show indications of it being super strong. Well, in business, most of us go into the cheap seed game. We're like, what's Ahmed doing? Oh, he's pretty successful. I'm just going to copy what he does. A lot of us are in this copy syndrome. We just emulate someone else because it's the easy thing to do. What I found colossal entrepreneurs do is they spend a lot of time understanding themselves, very introspectively. They understand what makes them as people truly unique and different. Then they exploit that difference. And my favorite example, this is an old iPhone, but Steve Jobs is a great example. One of the oddities or uniquenesses of Steve Jobs, and you can Google search this, he was afraid of buttons. He had a phobia of buttons. And because of this peculiar phobia, when he started designing and improving designs, you'll notice that his products have very few buttons. And this is true for the iPhone. The Apple mouse has basically like no buttons. He got rid of buttons. And because of that, Apple started designing technology that was more than just technology. It was also
touch
art.
screen.
It was also art. Yeah, touch screen and art. Because of his phobia, his uniqueness. So colossal entrepreneurs look at themselves inwardly and say, what makes me different than everyone else? And then they try to apply that to their business. So that's step one. There's many more steps, but I'll give you one more critical one. And it's the ability to distinguish our customers. Once our business starts rolling, some customers you'll find will be fantastic. They're fun to do business with and they pay you well. Other customers will say are just not fantastic. They don't pay you well. They're a pain to do business with. They're no fun whatsoever. They're argumentative. And what we need to do is sort those customers. Treat the best customers better than you treat your worst customers. Focus in on your best customers. And even have the courage, and it does take courage, to fire your worst customers. Because when you do that, it'll free up time to focus on more of your best customers and invest the time in finding more customers like your best customers. And when you cater to the best, you start becoming very narrow and focused on what you do. You start building a world-class reputation, and you start growing explosively.
Good clients versus no clients versus bad clients.
Oh, yeah, that's what, yeah. Yeah, so it's funny. So that's an article I wrote. I said there's 3 types of clients. There's good clients, there's no clients, and there's bad clients. And no clients is better than bad clients, yet most people think it's reversed. A good client pays you well and you enjoy doing business with them. You want more of them. No client means you're not making revenue, but you have the availability of time to seek your best clients. Bad clients mean they're not paying you well, you're probably losing money, and they're sucking you of your time, so you can't focus on getting good clients. So ironically, if you have bad clients, fire them. That brings you up a level to no clients, which is the level you need to be at to find more good clients.
What do you mean by the toilet paper entrepreneur?
Oh, okay. So I'm showing all my books to you just so you can see. So that's this book.
Your first book.
My first book, yeah. This book was about bootstrapping a business, the very early stages of business. And what I found is that most entrepreneurs who are starting and building a company believe that they need resources to succeed. They need money, and they need more of it. They need contacts, and they need more of them. They need equipment and services and all these different things to get started. And I found, ironically, businesses that start with less are more successful. You see, when we have less money, we have to find resourceful ways, innovative ways to get things done without the money. When you don't have contacts, you have to find ways to find those contacts or to succeed on your own accord without leveraging other people. When you don't have equipment and tools and resources, you have to find a way to acquire that or borrow it or barter for it. But the irony is this: the less you have, the more innovative you become, and the more innovative a company is, the higher likelihood of success. And so I just talk about how to leverage the fact that you have nothing and how that's actually your biggest asset.
So you are against the movement of tech startups and raising huge amount of money just for an idea and...
I'm for tech startups. I think tech is the coolest industry in the world. I'm not a big fan of getting money. And I've seen the dark side. I've raised money myself, so it's not like I'm just saying that. I've raised money. Raising money can lead a business to the game of simply raising money. And I've seen this more than I've ever wanted to see it. So a company goes out, it raises some funds, it gets funds in. The CEO's job now is to get the company the next stage of funding. Go from Series A to Series B, go from Series B to mezzanine. There's always fancy terms, but what it boils down to is the job of the leadership team is to get more money from other people, and they don't become innovative. So I do believe in funding once you have something that's successful. If you can get money in and you have something that's working and that money can move you faster down a path that's already proven to work, I think it's a great decision. I think it's often a poor decision when you get money in just to test an idea, and now the whole mentality is about raising more money, and that's it.
The other problem that I see in that also the entrepreneur becomes an employee because he just receives a fat salary, big salary, and then they shift their mentality as an employee. And I always struggle with that because I opened most of my companies without having a salary in my company. And I know that the entrepreneur also needs to live and needs to have something. Sure. But I always feel that I am more with giving the entrepreneur more share in the business and to profit, to take it, a piece from the profit instead of taking a fixed salary that it will make him feel as an employee. What do you think about that?
No, I agree fully. They call it skin in the game. And what that means is that when your lifestyle depends on the success of your business, you are very likely to do whatever it takes to make the business successful. You see, when we're in lockstep, meaning as my business moves forward, my life moves forward. I have enough money to afford my apartment or my house or whatever level I want to be at. But only if the business moves forward, I have skin in the game. We're in lockstep. When money is just given to me and my lifestyle is satisfied, the success of the company, maybe it's nice for my ego, but it's not a necessary component for me to sustain the lifestyle I want. And that's the divergence. That's why it's often a problem.
Why do you think a business plan is a bad idea or waste of time?
Well, I think a traditional business plan is a waste of time. I do lots of business planning, but I do it in a non-traditional sense. I can show you, it's here. I thought I had it over there. Here's my business plan. This is my entire business plan, and I have it right in front of me. I call it my 550 plan. And what's cool about a business plan like that is the traditional business plan is this thick. We had projections of different numbers and stuff that were pulled out of the thin air. Quite frankly, if you can predict the numbers of your brand new business or even an existing business for the next year, that means you probably can pick the stock market for one day. And if you can pick the stock market for one day, you're a billionaire. So it's artificial, these numbers and all these things. and we rarely reference it. So I have a vision of where I want my business to go. It's kind of the X on the map. But then on a daily basis, I simply track tasks. I don't know if you can see this, but here's my task management system that points right to my business plan, if you will. I call it prosperity plan. And then I symbolize, I have little symbols. I don't know if you can see it on the screen.
Yeah, I can see it very well.
Okay. Yeah, so smiley faces and dollar signs and so forth. These symbols indicate the importance or how closely it's tied into my vision. Something that has a smiley face and a dollar sign right at the top, that's going to bring me money and serve a client of mine. It's going to serve my prosperity plan. That's an infinity sign. That means this is a system that when I complete this task, it will achieve one of the things I have on my small plan there permanently. So, and then I cross things out as I get them done. For me, this is planning. It's dynamic because tomorrow, who knows what may happen? I may lose my biggest client. Everything will change tomorrow. But since I have an X to the map of where I want to go and have a system where I can change it very rapidly, I'm very comfortable going with the sways of business.
I love that. Like I do sometimes a business plan based on like one Excel sheet and submit it to the investors, or like even like made like kind of an Excel sheet simple for the employees to use it with certain formulas instead of like making 3 different statements like balance sheet and simple one just to input the data, and then they send it to the accountants to finish the other statements. But you don't struggle with the other area, which is like sometimes the industry or the common practice or standard of the industry or business or like the accounting. Like you feel that all this heavy weight thing against you because there is a standard for that, and maybe the investors will not understand the presentation, and they will look at you as not like so professional. This is good if you do it for your own business and you're bootstrapping it, but when you go to investors and things, don't you think that there is a struggle in that? And
there's absolutely a struggle, but I will tell you this: if a investor doesn't get it, I know they won't get me, and it's going to be a bad relationship. My most recent raise, and I probably won't raise money again. Well, if it may, actually I shouldn't say that. Maybe I will. But I raised money maybe 8-9 years ago, and I did that exact plan, and I sent it out to 30 potential investors. And one investor wrote back and said, basically, this is the perfect plan. You're exactly my type of people. And there was a check next to it. His name was Howard Hirsch. He's still an investor in my business. I still meet with him regularly, and he gets me and I get him, and he's been such an asset to me beyond just the money. Traditional investors who don't get it, it's going to be tough doing business with them going forward because they're not going to get me as a person. So while it feels disheartening when someone doesn't get this approach, if this approach is genuinely who you are, you don't want to do business with them anyway if they don't get it.
How to get more clients and turn them into like raving fans or clients?
So sort your clients, best client to worst client. As I told you earlier, clients that pay you well are showing through their actions that they like you. So if a customer comes back and buys from you repeatedly, they like you. And I have a saying, trust people's wallets, not their words. So you could call a customer of yours and say, how are we doing? They'll say, fantastic, I love it, and then never do business with you again. And it's socially appropriate to say things, so they lie to us because it's socially appropriate. But it's their actions that measure the best clients. So first of all, you got to identify who really are your best clients. Now, the trick to get more clients, more great clients, is go to your best clients and ask them where they congregate. What magazines do they read? What websites they visit? What events do they go to? What conferences do they attend? There's a saying, birds of a feather flock together. People of a similar personality and interest will accumulate. They'll gather together. So ask your best clients where they gather, insert yourself, appear there, and sure enough, you'll likely find people just like them.
How to increase a business revenue for 600%? This is from one of your books.
Oh, yeah, that's from Toilet Paper Entrepreneur. I haven't heard that question in like 5-6 years. So this was a study I did with a company called Further Ed. They used to be called Law Line. That's what I'm talking about in the book. They're now called Further Ed. Literally had a conversation with the CEO, David Schnurman, maybe 2 days ago. So it's kind of funny you're bringing this up. What they did was they set a single priority goal. Most of us have 20 goals we have to do, 50 things we need to accomplish. We tell our team, here's the 70 things we're going to do this quarter. Here's the 4 things we're going to do this quarter. What I found is companies that have one goal are way more likely to achieve it than companies that have 2 or 3 or 4 goals. Even though it doesn't seem like much, one goal brings focus. But then it's the job of us as the entrepreneur, the CEO, to drive a rhythm toward that one objective every single day. Tell the company about it, talk about it in different ways, but drive home that objective. What Further Ed did was they wanted to bring on, I think it was 100 new clients. I'm not sure the exact number, but we'll say it was 100 clients. Every time they brought on a new client, if they brought on 10, they would put a gold bullion, a pretend one, a brick, painted gold, and put it on a table right in the central area where all their employees gathered. And they said once we achieve 100 clients, which would be 10 gold bullions stacked as a pyramid, once that final piece is put on, every person here in the company is going to get a real gold coin worth, say, $1,000 or whatever it was. So everyone was very focused on the one goal: bring on these clients, bring on these clients. And the owner was pointing to it every day. They made a visual statement around it. And the company in 90 days grew 600% by driving on that goal. And by the way, they did achieve it. They even, I think they filmed a ceremony where he put the final brick on top and then it gave everyone a gold coin.
How we make what we are offering the world best?
So I did a TED, I spoke on the TED platform. I did a TEDx speech around being the world's best. And there's a misunderstanding what that means. Most people hear world's best and they think of the entire globe. There's 6 or 7 billion of us on this planet. And they say, well, that's the world. And then the best means the number one spot out of everybody. That's a misnomer. World is a perception. So your world and my world are radically different. You know people I don't know, and I know people you don't know. So my perspective of the world is here. Your perspective of the world is there. So world isn't 6 or 7 billion people. It's the perception of our consumer. What do they see? It's way less people or things. It's a smaller community. World isn't global. It's a community. And then the best is simply being the most unique in something. There's dozens of ways of being the best. If you had a restaurant serving your prospect's world, that community, you could be the fastest service, deliver food very quickly. But you could also be the slowest, meaning you take your time, it's a luxurious meal, spend 4 or 5 hours enjoying time together. You could have the spiciest food, you could have the strangest food, you could have the tastiest, you could have the biggest variety, you could have the smallest. You see, it always ends with an EST, which means superlative. It always ends with the most of something, but there's dozens of variations. And when you match up world, which really means communities, with best, which means all these variable ESTs, ests, you can find a way for you to truly be the world's best.
What is super strength?
Super strength is, I talk about that in Toilet Paper Entrepreneur also. That's a combination of our natural talents and our history. When it comes together, it distinguishes us. So, perhaps one of my strengths is doing public speaking. But there's a lot of people that have a strength doing speaking, so there's still a group of people that are on the same platform as me. But the second I introduce my own unique stories, now it becomes very distinct. I can tell certain stories from my vantage point, do it through my talent of being a speaker, and no one else can deliver on that because it's my own unique story. So super strength is taking your best, strongest talents and matching it up with your true uniqueness, your stories and life experience, and combined it becomes a super strength, something no one else can touch.
Regarding raising money, like you encourage people or entrepreneur to start a business with no money or little money as much as possible. Is that means that they should start a small business and think big, or what does that mean?
I think you should always think big. Like what's your real dream? And you don't have to get it right. Just whatever in the moment feels appropriate, and it can change. But then when you get started, figure out how to do it with as little few resources as possible. One example I like is I was talking to someone who wanted to start an airline business. They wanted to have their own airline company, and they wanted to fly out of the major airports and fly internationally. And they said, but to do that, I have to get hundreds of millions, if not billions, in funding to buy airplanes. And he goes, it's overwhelming. I said, no, first step is maybe just to get a pilot's license. So you have a vision of having your own airline industry one day, but get a pilot's license. Then maybe you can give training to other people so you start making some money to fly. Then maybe you can rent a small airplane, a little propeller airplane, and do little commuter flights over time and make some more money. Maybe then you can leverage that into multiple planes and start getting other pilots flying these small regional things. And maybe you'll get to a certain size where now the ability, the funding may naturally be coming about where you can get a real, full established version of your industry going. Or at least you've proven that it works well enough that you can get in funding to do more of what's already working and grow faster.
And you understand the industry. What do you mean by PFA account?
Oh, so I wrote that in the Toilet Paper Entrepreneur. That was my first introduction to Profit First. So PFA stands for Profit First Accounting. I shortened it just to say Profit First. But that's what this is. I think every business, I don't care how big you are, how small you are, how new you are, or how old you are, you must have at least one additional account to what you have now, and it's a profit account. You have to have an account where you're instantly putting profit. The second a deposit comes in, take your profit first. It's that simple.
You had a column in the Wall Street Journal. You used to write for them. What did you learn from this experience, and why did you stop?
So Wall Street Journal is awesome. It was fun writing for them. They had a standard or an expectation beyond many of the other outlets. They expect and demand high quality writing. So it pushed me to become a much better writer than I ever was before. That's why I learned from them. And why I left, my time was done. I did my tenure. I wrote for them for 3 years and moved on to different things. But I'm proud. That'll always be on my resume, and I'm very proud of that phase. It was awesome.
But why you stopped? Why you didn't continue writing for them, even as a freelance, or you didn't want to?
Well, I think when it came up for renewal and we discussed it, I think the time was done. Like it was just done for me from my vantage point. I could have pushed for it and said, you know what, maybe get another year out. But I think the things I wanted to accomplish were done, and I wanted to avail that time to do other stuff. One thing I'm investing in heavily now is podcasting, and I spend 4 or 5 hours a week podcasting. I used to spend 4 or 5 hours a week just writing for the Wall Street Journal. So it's just transitioned onto something new. That's really the primary reason.
What did you learn from hosting a TV shows?
So
and how did you get into that?
Yeah. So TV for me is probably the most fun. I have been on the U.S. news channels, the national channels, and stuff like that as a studio guest, and that's a lot of fun. But then I was invited to do a pilot TV show, a thing called Bailout, which was produced, and then it didn't pass the next stage. It was a pilot, but the U.S. or the consumers responded and said, no, it's not good enough, or it doesn't meet our demands, and it went away. I just recently was invited to do another pilot, so we'll see where that goes. But that's how. So TV is a lot of fun. What I'm drawn to is it's such a powerful mechanism for getting the word out. Just like you and I are doing this now, 50, 100, 10,000 people can watch this simultaneously and learn from it. But more than just the written text, they get the energy we have and the dynamics. Television's the same thing, but the folks I'm talking with now is on a much, much even greater scale. We're talking hundreds of thousands or millions of people watching. And what excites me is the ability to get the word out about entrepreneurship, to share tips and ideas in a very cool, unique, fun way where many, many people will absorb it.
How did you sign for that contract for the show? Like you went to a TV station and you told them that I want to make a show, or they approached you because of your work?
Because of my work. Because it's funny, because of the Wall Street Journal, because of my podcast, because of my books. So I think other people that want to be on television, a couple things I'm learning, at least for me, is a lot of people want to be on TV to be famous or to get exposure. But I don't think that's enough. I think the reason I'm drawn to television, I think it's an amazing platform to help others. And that's, I think, has to be the primary driver. Because I don't care. I mean, I do care. If the TV doesn't work out and I'm never on TV again, I care. I'll be disappointed. But it doesn't matter. I will keep pushing to get the word out in any outlet that wants to have me there. And when it comes to TV, in every case, I've been approached. but I've been approached because I've been established in the other arenas, public speaking, writing books. I've never gone out and asked for a TV show or tried to pitch it. So I'm not familiar. I know people do that. I'm just not too familiar with how to pitch a show.
You worked in TV. Like, how do you see the future of TV versus like internet TV shows, web TV shows? Like, do you encourage like people to go to TV from their TV shows or to stay on the internet because the future is the internet? How do you see that?
Yeah, I think the internet is just taking off, and I mean taking off. I mean, it has taken off, but for television, it's become the primary platform. I've actually even read some studies. I think television, as we know it in the traditional sense, is going to go away, but we'll still have a big screen if you want, and you'll still be able to get it. It's just the way it'll be delivered differently. But the interaction is increasing. So television is very much like a play where actors are up there, they're going through the routine. The audience only can applaud, but they don't have much influence. The way television's going now is the audience can more than applaud, they can interact. So as I do more television, my hopes, and I hope to influence this, is that it'll become more iterative as we're going through the process of telling a story, that also the audience is participating in the story itself, giving feedback, giving suggestions, putting weight into it. As crazy as shows like, I think it's called The Voice and these different idol shows, what I like about them as these people are trying to become big singers or whatever their career endeavors are, that the audience is voting and participating and talking about it. I think that's pretty cool.
Best PR advice to entrepreneur or tips?
Different is better. Different is better. Most of us try to be louder. Most of us look at other people's marketing and PR and just try to do it better. That's a mistake. Different gets noticed. And the reason I say this is if you look at the biology of the human mind, our minds are designed to filter out stuff that we constantly hear and to focus on something new and different. Because when something new and different presents itself, it could be an opportunity for us or it could be a threat. But our mind at least pays attention to it momentarily to measure, is this an opportunity or a threat? So when it comes to marketing, don't just be more noise. That gets filtered out. Do something that's different and the customer will grant you their attention. Now, only briefly, and you have to prove that it's value to them or they'll start ignoring you, but they will give you their attention every time if you simply be different.
And then, like, you advise them to do, let's say, press releases, to pitch the media, to be featured in the media. What are the techniques that you use usually?
Oh, so it's funny. I don't do any of that stuff because that's what everyone else does. Whatever everyone else does, that's usually, for me, the big indicator not to do the same thing. So when it comes to media, I'm thinking I'm very blessed right now. Fast Company magazine called me today to do an interview. Inc. called me a couple days ago. I'm at the stage where they're calling me. But to get started in it, I would, what I did is I would contact them and give them I would pitch other people. Basically, I would reach out and say, I know someone that could really be a good story for you. I'm not their agent. I'm nothing. I'm an author myself, but this person's good for you. I became an asset to the journalist. And they're like, wow, no one's ever done that before. Which, by the way, when someone says that, that's an indicator you're being different. No one's ever offered up other people. Sure. And then they started relying on me saying, hey, I'm looking for someone that has these expertise. Do you know someone? I said, I know a couple people. Let me make some introductions. Well, after building rapport like this, they said, what are your expertise, Mike? Because maybe we can interview you. And I'm like, absolutely. So that is how I got to...
like indirectly selling indirectly.
Yes, genuinely supporting others. It's unexpected.
Why TV doesn't sell books?
I don't know, but it doesn't. I mean, some does. Like if you get an Oprah or another show with the right type of book, it will. If you sell a fiction book and you get on Oprah or what used to be Oprah, they'll sell books. The type of shows I'm in, I think people aren't really engaged in the expert themselves as much as the quick tips. These are people watching the show saying, okay, I want that tip, good, and they're on. I don't think they're really engaged in the story, therefore not compelled to buy the book. Maybe the right show that you appear on as a guest for the right market and the right storyline will motivate people to buy books. But I've never been on a show where people are I mean, I've sold books because of it, but never big numbers. Nothing amazing.
What did you learn from the experience of printing 20,000 books for your first book,
Wow, you
and
did
how
your
did you sell
research,
them?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so when I printed my first book, Toilet Paper Entrepreneur, this Toilet Paper Entrepreneur, by the way, is a self-published book. I then subsequently went with Penguin Books to publish, and then I've returned to self-publishing. I prefer self-publishing. But this book was self-published, and I was just a fool. I didn't know the rules of the game. So I said, well, I'll probably sell 20,000 copies of this book in the first week. I better buy them. So I did, and the first week I sold basically nothing. The advantage of making that grave mistake was this cost me a lot of money, my money, and I had no option now to make it successful. So when my book wasn't selling, instead of saying, oh, I guess books don't sell and giving up on being an author, I said, I got to double down. I got to push harder than ever before because I got an inventory of 20,000 books, and that made me so motivated. And it's sold now over 75,000 copies of the book.
Why you came back to self-publishing, like publishing versus self-publishing? Tell us more about that, and what are the major things that any author should, be careful about when signing with a publisher, like to keep the rights. Do they accept to keep the rights for ebooks or audiobooks, and they just focus on the paperback?
Yeah, I had a great experience with Penguin as my publisher. I think they're awesome. The reason I went back to self-publishing was when I pitched the idea of Profit First, the response was, no one's interested in another accounting book. And I said, first of all, you don't understand this. This is not an accounting book. It's how to manage money. I said, people are very interested in this because no one has the answer yet, and I'm convinced this is the answer to becoming profitable. And they said, we don't believe it. I said, that's great. I want to do this on my own. And they said, we support that and believe it. We'll allow you to do it. And so I went out and self-published Profit First my own, and it's been hands down my most successful book. But now, the next go around, I may go back with the publisher. Here's the thing. A publisher, the real advantage is simply distribution. They still have an ability to distribute on an international scale when it comes to print books, physical printed hardcover books like this one. They have an ability to do it, whereas a self-published author, it's very difficult to pull off because you don't have the network. Secondly, it's expensive. So that's the main advantage. Self-publishing, though, gives you total control over the content, and it gives you total control of what you share. With Pumpkin Plan, when this book came out, Penguin said, we'll allow you to release one chapter for free to get people whetting their appetite. I said, if I was a reader, I want like almost the whole book for free. And then I'll buy the book almost as a souvenir, as a way to kind of give back. So with Profit First, I gave away 5 chapters, the entire essence of Profit First, and word started circulating so fast that the book sales actually skyrocketed. So self-publishing gives you control that you wouldn't have elsewhere. And actually, if you do it right, it's far more profitable. Net, I've made more money on the self-publishing side than I have on the publishing side, and all 3 books have performed extremely well in volume. And that's it. So I consider myself a hybrid author, and I think I'll stay that way. I don't know if I'm going to go self-publishing the whole distance. I'm going to keep doing it, but I think I'll go back to publishers for the right book at the right time.
But don't you think credibility, you lose the credibility, with the publishers, traditional publishing, you get more credibility than self-published? Even maybe you'd get more money with the self-published.
Yeah, I would think so, but no. I mean, I bet you if you ask anyone, say, hey, have you read any of Mike's books? And they say, oh yeah, I read Pumpkin Plan, Profit First. If you ask them, who's his publisher? They'll say, I don't know. One of them was published by Penguin. Do you know? And they'll be like, I don't know. I mean, they'll look at the books. I mean, you can't tell the difference. They're both hardcover books, and you can't tell. I don't think people care so much about it anymore. I think it used to matter, but now you simply go on Amazon, you look at the reviews and say, this book's performing well, other people like it, that's the book I want, and you don't care who published it. So I think the credibility component is less and less important. It's going away, I think.
To explain to the audience, you said traditional publishers have the advantage of the distribution. What does that mean? Is that means only the bookstores?
Yeah, they have the advantage of the print distribution. So when it comes to electronic distribution, through e-readers. Here's my Kindle here in this case. Other e-readers. I can distribute to India, Australia, Nicaragua, any country, anywhere, electronically like this. A traditional publisher can print it and have the printing distributed locally. The challenge I have as a self-publisher is if I print my book and I want to sell it in Australia and I'm in the US, I have to somehow get my book down to Australia and set up a distribution channel out there. It's expensive. So the best way to do it is actually hire a print house down there, actually have it printed and manufactured in Australia, and then establish the distribution. Now I got to do this with every country out there. I got to do this with India and throughout Europe and Russia and all these different countries. It's overwhelming. The publishers have already had that network in place. So the day the Pumpkin Plan came out, it was released, I think, in like 40 countries simultaneously, and it was available in print simultaneously. It's a help getting out the door. But on the flip side, less and less people are reading traditional hardcover books.
Pumpkin Plan was with the publisher or self-published?
Publisher. This was with Penguin Books. So, and the only indicator you can see right there's the little penguin over there. Like, that's the only way you can tell nowadays. So this was out in many countries simultaneously in the print version. That was a slight advantage. But when Profit first came out, see, this is my own little publishing icon. That's me. While it wasn't in 50 countries in print, it was only in the U.S. and Canada in print.
And you still made more money than the published one?
Yeah, because the electronic is about 70 to 80% of the demand. Electronic is Kindle, but it's also the audio version. And that can be distributed anywhere in the world instantaneously.
What is blend publishing?
Blend, that's what I call being a hybrid, where you self-publish sometimes, and in the right times you're working with a major publisher because of the instant burst it gives you.
But you cannot sign with a traditional publisher and just give them the right for the paperbacks or hardcover, or they don't accept and you take the digital distribution? In general...
Yeah, generally they don't. But anything can be negotiated, so you might. I believe that traditional publishers want the print, of course, but also want the electronic version. But the audio version, I was dumbfounded. In my book that I did with Penguin, my second book, they sold the audio rights to a third party. And that third party is doing very well with it. Now I'm thinking about, I should have, and shame on me, I didn't, negotiated that the audio rights were mine. Because then I could have distributed the audio rights and actually been more successful, made more money on it. So as I'm working on my fourth book right now. I'm considering a publisher. I don't know if it's appropriate for this book. If I do, one of the things I'm going to argue in my contract is I want the audio rights.
When you write a book, you pitch the publisher first for the idea, or you complete the book and then you start pitching the publishers?
Yeah, well, it depends what stage author you are. So a brand new author will usually have to write some of the book, a few chapters maybe, a full outline of the book. If it's a fiction book, you got to write the entire book, and then present it to the publisher. Someone that's more established, in my case, I just write a one-page. Here's my outline and thoughts. And the most established people, like Seth Godin, I love hearing this story. We share the same publisher. We're both with Penguin. He went to meet with the president over coffee. They're talking just ideas, and Seth goes, "Oh, I have an idea about the dip." That we go through the mental challenges we have, and he drew a simple symbol on the board and said, "This is the book I want to write." And they said, "We'll buy it." So if you're a certain level author like a Seth Godin, you're so established and so influential, just the idea, you don't even need an outline, and a publisher will buy it.
How do you write efficiently, structure your writing? How do you blog efficiently? I saw that you invite maybe guest bloggers as well. Tell us more about that.
Occasionally, yeah. I do most of my writing when I'm flying on an airplane, and I don't know if I'm so efficient at it. I just write a lot, but I write when I feel compelled to write. So if I have to write, I usually don't write well. If I want to write, I usually write well, and I just do it when there's quiet times. And I'm on an airplane a lot, so usually I'm up in the air blogging or writing a book.
Who's the best video editor that you have ever worked with and you can recommend? Because I see the editing of your videos is amazing.
Oh, thank you. Best guy, probably Grant Thonnack is his name. I worked with him a lot. Just worked with him again last week. I can't remember the name of his business, but here's the deal. He's a a young guy. It's his own business. He's a one-man band, and he's willing to take my input on what I see as the vision, and then he makes it happen. I totally believe in working with really small businesses and freelancers. I always get the best experience with those type of companies.
What's his name again? Can you share the name?
Yeah, Grant Thonack. It's Thonack. And I think it's called Build Your Business Video. I'm pretty sure. BuildYourBusinessVideo.com.
When you do the self-published books, do you use any company? Do you recommend any company? What's your plan when you do that? You use just Amazon? You use other platforms?
Yeah, so I use Amazon. I use Smashwords. I use Barnes & Nobles. They have a small business division where you can work with them and distribute your print book. When it comes to physically printing the book, there's a couple companies that do it. My favorite experience, or best experience, was with a company called bookmasters.com. They're great because Bookmasters prints usually for the large publishing houses, so they achieve a quality book that is phenomenal. And then,
so they are just just printing or marketing as
printing
well?
and distribution. They'll do distribution if you want. I don't use them for distribution, but they can. And then I use Elance, and it's amazing the amazing talent throughout the world you can find on Elance for design for your cover, websites, and all the other stuff that you need to complement your book.
How about the audio version of the book? Do you use any distributor for that? Or you just upload it?
Yeah, check out acx.com.
Yeah, I know ACX.
That's what I use, yeah.
Top 3 favorite books.
Oh my God, I got like top 1,000 right now. Well, Purple Cow is one of my favorites because it speaks to being remarkable. That's a Seth Godin book. This is an unfair response, but anything by Malcolm Gladwell, it just inspires to me a different degree of thinking. So anything by Malcolm Gladwell I read. Same thing with Michael Lewis. And then I would also recommend any of the persuasion books. So Influence by Robert Cialdini is a big one. Right now I'm reading another book called Methods of Persuasion. Actually, I'll look at my Kindle. I don't even know. I'm not even sure who the author is, quite frankly, but he wrote a darn good book. Give me one sec. I'll pull it up here. It is... go home. I'll show you the book. One sec. Yeah, Methods of Persuasion by Nick Kolenda. So you can see it right there. Methods of Persuasion. That's a really good book.
What are the softwares that you use that makes you more efficient, like must-use software for you?
So I'm pretty lame when it comes to software. Because I do a lot on my little work pad, the thing I showed you earlier, where I write down, my task list to make me more efficient. But if there's one thing I love, it is my CRM. I use Zoho CRM, and it is just such a good system. Supposedly Salesforce is good too, but Zoho is amazing.
How your work-life routine look like when you wake up till you sleep? What do you do?
Yeah, wake up. I work out occasionally. I work out more on weekends. I make breakfast with my family. See my kids off to school. Then I come down to work, and then I'm usually here till about 5:30. So I usually work from about 8 to 5:30, and I've gotten really good, thanks to my business partner who's down the hallway now, in wrapping up the day, usually around 5:30. I used to try to work as long as I can to be a workaholic, but I found it just drains me, and I'm actually not that productive. When I compress my day down, when I have less time, I actually get more stuff done because I got to get done now. I'm not going to get it done at all.
Other hobbies?
I play guitar. I play some sports, softball and lacrosse and stuff, and then spend time with the family. And I love football. So whenever it's on, I'm watching it or going to a game.
Top 3 mentors.
Top 3 mentors. So on my wall here, these are what I call my virtual mentors. Michael Gerber, even though I know Michael Gerber personally, Michael Gerber, George Washington, Harold Thurman Whitman. Unfortunately, George Washington and Harold Thurman Whitman have both deceased, but I love some of their sayings, so I see them as mentors. But my real world ones, Frank Minutolo's good. There's a guy named Barry Kaplan. Actually, we're getting together pretty soon. He's amazing. Silas, he's from my church and guided me on a lot of things. So, yeah.
Top 3.
Some women. Some
Yeah.
women too, by the way. I don't work with just men. I try to find other people to coach me that are women to get a perspective that I just don't have naturally.
Top 3 movies.
Terminator 2, the best ever. Terminator 2 again, and Terminator 2. I'm not a big movie guy at all, but I love Terminator 2.
Most important factors for success in 3 words.
In 3 words, be yourself fully.
Top 3 apps that you use on your phone.
I use Google Analytics, but it's called Spyware or something like that, or some weird name. But Google Analytics, Waze for navigating anywhere. I love Waze, and I'm just looking now, and the camera. Like I take pictures of everything. I'm at a conference. I'm taking pictures of notes. I saw a bottle of wine last night. I had some wine. I was like, this is amazing wine. I took a picture of it. So the simple camera app, I love it.
What's the best advice that you have ever received?
So it was bizarre. The best advice I ever received was, do not listen to my advice. And then the guy went on to tell me his advice. And I asked him, I said, why do you say don't take my advice? He says, any advice you receive from anyone is from their own perspective, their own bias. It may not be in your best interest. They may intend to help you as best they can, but they can't see through your eyes. So when you get advice, even from the world's best experts, do not take the advice. Only take it if it resonates with you and connects with you. Then it's usually right. Otherwise, he said, just because an expert's saying it doesn't mean it's right.
What would you advise your younger self if you have the chance?
Appreciate everything a lot more, even the bad stuff. I'm trying to do that more and more in my life. So anything I go through, if it's great, bad, or in between, just show appreciation for it, that I at least had the experience. And maybe there isn't a lesson even to be learned, but I think everything can be appreciated. And I wish I did more of that when I was younger.
What makes you really happy?
My wife. I mean, she's just awesome. Like, she's literally my best friend. She's pretty badass. Totally. Yeah, she's pretty cool. For me, she's pretty badass.
Okay, last question. How people can contact you?
Come to MikeMichalowicz.com. Hopefully you can include the link because that is hard to spell.
I will.
But I have you mentioned the Wall Street Journal articles. Anyone that subscribes to my website gets all those articles I wrote for the Wall Street Journal. I just send them to you. But my phone number's up there if you want to call me. My mailing address. But all tons of resources. I blog regularly. My podcast. All that stuff is there.
Thank you so much, Mike, for this information and great experience. Really appreciate it.
Ahmed, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone. Be efficient and stay efficient, and see you soon with another leading expert.